As we get into draft week, the biggest intrigue around the Vikings might be, are they going to pick in the first round at all? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thank you so much to my hashtag everydayers for coming around, listening all draft season. Today is Forno Friday, the last Forno Friday before the draft starts in earnest. So Tyler, thank you so much for all of your time this whole draft season. I really appreciated it. The listeners have really appreciated it. This has been awesome. And we decided that the topic for today has to be around, like, will they trade down? Can they trade down? You know, we went over yesterday, if they stick and pick at 24, last week, if they stick and pick at 24, who those guys would be. So if you're not interested in hearing about a trade down at all, that one might be more to your taste. Where we talked about Malachi Starks and Nick Emmanwori, and I did a show earlier this week about Derek Harmon. Those are three really, really common names to see in mock drafts, really likely ideas if the Vikings can't get a trade down done. But the other question that comes with that is, will Kwesi be able to get a good deal? The trades he has made in the past, going from 12 to 32, the Lewis Scene thing, didn't get enough back. And I said that, on all the charts and stuff, didn't get as much back as you usually could for moving back 20 spots in the first round. And trading up for trading from the second round up to 23 and then up to 17 was also a little more expensive than it usually is. So can Kwesi get a good deal? Well, it turns out that it might have been a good deal to him because he just kind of looks at this stuff differently. He talked about this in a presser. So let's start by listening and reacting to that clip and the way that Kwesi really looks at draft trades.
It's a difficult exercise. It's something that I've been fascinated by. I built a chart myself. I've seen other different charts, and they all take different assumptions that, or quite frankly, this is a hard exercise. How do you value a great player at a great position? You could assign a number to it, right? When you assign that number to it, does that incorporate the scarcity of that type of player? If you don't get that player in the draft, you can't typically get that player in for agency. So how do you put a number on that aspect of it? It's and different people have different ways of doing that. And I've seen people in San Francisco do it, in Cleveland do it, myself, all the different things. And you appreciate the different methods. I think the best thing you can do is understand why each chart is built the way it is, and kind of maybe for each decision you make, understand kind of how you're using it for you, and kind of go with that chart value there. It's a great question. It's a fascinating thing. I don't know that anybody's going to solve it because you're trying to assign a number to a thing that's not really perfectly easy to do so.
Great stuff,
Tyler.
man.
Yeah, you have an interesting interpretation of all of that, like Kwesi speak.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you think he's trying to tell us there?
I think what he's really trying to tell us is there is more to it than just looking at the draft trade charts we have, which are great resources. And I actually wrote a piece for Wide Left, which, reminder, Luke, we still have to unionize. That needs to be a thing.
We should unionize.
And I wrote it right after the Vikings made multiple draft trades after day one. And it's about 2,000 words. A lot of great stuff in there. But the basic synopsis is, I think Kwesi, specifically with the Dallas Turner trade, was not attacking the pick, which he was receiving. He was attacking the player. And when you look at it, the convention, he's always had an interesting relationship with the conventional charts versus the analytical charts. He almost always never wins across the board. But when he does, it's beating the Green Bay Packers, which God bless America. But he gave up, he gained an early 4th round grade on the Johnson chart, early 5th round grade or pick from the Rich Hill, but he lost on all the analytical charts. But if you think about it, where you give up that amount to go up to pick 9, which is where Dallas Turner was on the board, you absolutely smoke on the conventional charts, getting a mid-second round pick in value. So that's where I think this quote is very interesting, because it's hard to put a number on the player that you're acquiring, which is why Ben Baldwin's chart specifically says you should never use it when you're trading up for a quarterback, because in analytical terms, quarterback provides most value.
Yeah.
So
And the like shiny apps, the Hefe's handiwork thing that you can use that compares all these trade charts against each other, which is what we're using to see this. You can actually toggle if it's a QB trade or not. And some of those charts do have like an adjustment that you can do, which makes all that make a little bit more sense. Yeah.
yeah, and he is attacking the ninth overall player in the draft, which
Yeah.
they may have even valued him higher than that. And we're using Rifasan's consensus board, which I think is the best tool we have to us to really determine what a player's value is or should be versus what any singular person, because when you have it's herd mentality. The more
Yeah.
information you have,
The
the
wisdom of
better
crowds.
information it is. So he's trading up for the ninth overall prospect. We're viewing it as a collective whole as he gave up too much to get pick 17.
But what if
But
he got pick 9? Yeah.
yeah, if he got pick 9, he's getting smoking great value. And the
Yeah.
analytical charts are like, you're either losing a 6th or a 7th. The Stewart chart actually is a complete wash. It's just even. So
To do what Kwesi traded up from, like, are you doing it? Sorry, are you doing this both the trades in one or just the draft day trade?
I'm talking about what he gave up to go from 23 to 17.
Okay, just
I
the
didn't.
draft day trade.
Mhm.
And the Stewart chart says
That if you were to
that if it
trade
was
up
up to 9, it was even.
yeah.
Oh, well,
They
there's
gave
your
up
answer.
23, 188, a mid 3, and a mid 4, which is at the time, like, we didn't know how good the Vikings were going to be last year. We thought it would be kind of a retool year. So picking about 16th sounded
Right, we
about
kind of
right.
thought that was more, and conserving the first round pick was their like goal because they thought it was going to be
Mhm.
like a top 10 pick too.
Yeah.
Um, which it ended up not being, which, hey, great. That's, the reasons for that we're all happy about. I might still be the hater on this and say, like, okay, I get it, right? Like, you're going up to 17 and you're trading up to get the ninth player, and you're giving up something reasonable to get what you perceive to be the ninth player. And for
Mhm.
the Dallas Turner haters out there, calm down. We're talking about, as prospects, as draft slots. The actual, did that turn out to be worth the ninth overall slot or 17th overall slot or whatever, is a separate question that we can debate at a later day. But in terms of just like the value here, but what I will say is, just because the ninth best player was on the board doesn't mean you have to go pay full price for it right away. You still maybe could have haggled that down a little bit better. And that's something that I don't think Kwesi is very good at.
Mhm.
He's a Wall Street guy. When you trade stocks, you don't haggle. It's just, stock is just worth what the stock is worth. So I think some of those values are a little bit more fixed in his mind than they necessarily have to be. I think he needs to do a little more post-apocalyptic bartering of bottle caps for paper clips, and I think a little bit of that could maybe eke more value out. But that the ceiling of that critique is going to be, okay, well, you made the move and maybe you could have kept a fourth or something like that
Mhm.
instead of giving it away. Like, it's always going to be a little bit small potatoes based on the actual, like, compared to the overall, was it the right decision to go up and get your guy? And I'm going to have a different opinion on that. But I do think that over the long term, he's bled a little bit of value on these just by not being a great negotiator.
And I think that's a really interesting point. Something I've never thought about before, where stocks are incredibly binary. This is the price.
They're
Take
fixed.
it or leave it. And the only
And,
time that
and the
you
way to
can
get a better deal is to like wait and time
yeah.
it right, which he's great at,
Mhm.
at figuring out exactly when the right moment is to sign a backup quarterback so that you can get a new comp pick. Like, that kind of logic comes, I think, a lot more easily to this front office than, okay, well, the Jets want this, but I'm going to go tell them that the Giants are giving me a different offer so that they give me something else. Like, he doesn't have the relationships in the league to do that yet. And
Mhm.
that'll take time. They're growing. That's just going to come with not being a very experienced person.
Yeah.
But also, yeah, you don't haggle on Wall Street.
I think this whole conversation brings up another interesting point, Luke, where he says he's been in multiple organizations and they all have different trade charts and they all have different purposes. If your trade chart is built to really identify what you believe, and that is to try and properly contextualize individual players. So it's essentially, you have the same basic data set, and then you input an entire draft class into there to really determine those values. Well, if you're using that, and if you trade with say the Dallas Cowboys and they're just using the Jimmy Johnson chart, how valuable is that? Because now you're working on two different planes, and it
Yeah.
becomes a heck of a lot more difficult to really understand where the negotiating power is.
Yeah, like there's an opportunity if you know a team is using the Jimmy Johnson trade chart. And for example, we have a lot of evidence based on the trades that they have done in the past that the Chiefs use it. That the Chiefs will take any deal that is valuable, looks valuable on the Jimmy Johnson trade chart, which basically means that they will take any time you're trying to trade down with them, you stand to gain value. Um and then he just won't. And then he'll take a deal that looks good on his chart, and the Chiefs are the ones doing backflips because they feel like they got great value on the Jimmy Johnson chart. Like, yeah, he'll always feel okay internally about the value that he got, but that doesn't mean you couldn't have been greedy and gotten more. That was my main critique of the Lewis Cine trade when it happened. Because I didn't know how those players were going to work out yet. So all I could talk about was like the value. And obviously with them working out worse, like that it looks a lot worse now. But even at the time, like that was my main thing was like, okay, if you're going to trade down past Kyle Hamilton because you think Lewis Cine is almost as good, I'll give you that. I'll respect that that's what you think. And we'll judge that at a later date. But you could have gotten more for it in the moment. And you didn't. And like that's where it lost me. I want to continue this conversation with you and also get more into the practicalities. Can the Vikings actually pull off a trade down if they want to? Who's coming up and who are they coming up for? That'll be next on Locked On Vikings. This episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by Upwork. Scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time, and with Upwork, you can find exactly that expertise when you need it. Specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more. Experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. And it gives you all the flexibility you need to get whatever you need done and efficiently find the people ready to do it. With top freelance talent across multiple industries, IT, AI, web development, and marketing, and much more. Whether you need extra hands for a project or someone a little bit more long-term, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. Posting a job on Upwork is free and simple, and within a day, you'll have multiple qualified candidates to choose from. Visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That's UPWORK.com, Upwork.com, to connect with top talent and grow your business today. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of the Locked On Vikings podcast. If you want to learn a little bit more about the players the Vikings could be looking at here, I just published a video about Derek Harmon. I have the goal before the draft to finish one about Malachi Starks and then CJ West, who's kind of my draft crush. Yeah. You missed that, Tyler, right after you left when I was watching last night. Oh, baby, I was feeling things. Did a whole show about it yesterday. Yeah. Oh, I love it. I've got him probably irresponsibly high. So I'll defend that taking a Patreon video as well. That's at patreon.com/LukeBraunNFL. But for us, if like every time we've done a mock draft on this, Tyler, you and I, or every time I've done it on like Minnesota Football Party, every time we get to 24, I'm like, yeah, there's about 7 players that I guess would work here. And when that's the case, you want to trade down, right? Go down to pick 32, get one of those same players you would have been fine picking at 24, but then get extra draft picks for it, right? Like it's free money. The problem is if there are 7 players that you're okay with picking at 24, who's coming up to 24? So I know that we'll talk about the idea of it being a quarterback. And in particular, that name probably has to be Jackson Dart. That's the one that people have been talking about as like a late first kind of quarterback, but none of the teams that made the playoffs last year really need one. So it implies that someone's going to come up thinking maybe the Giants, right? But is there anybody outside of quarterback that you think a team could get so in love with that they trade back up into the first round and try to like do the Harrison Smith thing, but with the Vikings?
I think what's really interesting about that conversation is who goes in front. And one of the tough parts about having this conversation is we don't know how the draft board is going to fall. Every year there's a guy that falls. Right. The Ravens usually just pick him, because that's just the most Ravens thing to do. Oh, this guy's here. Right. We had him at like 10th on our board. Okay. Thank you, NFL. That's how they got guys like Kyle Hamilton. Like that. It's just what they do.
Yeah. Wait, you're onto something here, because let's say it's Jihad Campbell. I know how you feel about him. If Jihad Campbell is on the board at 24 and you're like the Eagles and you want him, don't you kind of have to leapfrog the Ravens?
Yeah. And like with Campbell, like, I can see D'Amico Ryans being obsessed with that guy. Like, I could talk for 20 minutes about Campbell and how much I love him. But one of the things is there's always going to be a guy that falls. Trying to identify that guy and having run simulations like, which is what they're kind of doing right now, trying to figure out if that guy's there, how do we handle it? The Laramie Tunsil gas mask is going to be the number one instance of a guy falling that had no business falling because somebody leaked that video right before the draft. So how are you going to handle that situation and who could potentially come up? Quarterback's the obvious one. But what if a guy like Shamar Stewart, the Texas A&M edge, who hyper athlete, Trevon Walker type athletic profile,
Right. Who
but like
I think most people see him going like top 10.
I do too. I have
Maybe
him
top
third
15.
overall on my board. I love him.
Yeah. And it's like flirting with that Abdul Carter blue chip reputation. Not quite there, but people are seeing him very much as like a top player who probably shouldn't be available at 24. But yeah, you're like, what if he is there? I'm just giving context.
What if Tedero McMillan, the 6'5" wide receivers there? Because people are talking about him being available in the late teens. It's not too
super
crazy.
good. Yeah.
It's all few picks back.
Yeah.
So if one of those guys is there, how do you handle trading back? And those are the conversations, like I said, they're having. I think it's going to end up being quarterback. You mentioned Jackson Dart, who I think is stinky. I don't like him at all. I think he's a career backup. Jalen Milroe is the one that I think we should be talking about in that spot. Because if you want a chance at a Josh Allen type player, the archetype, except he runs 4.4 and has the vision of an elite running back. There was real talk from scouts that he could potentially be a running back because he's
a running back, because he's the right size and he's got the makeup for it. I definitely see it if you just don't believe at all in him at quarterback. I haven't watched enough of Jalen Milroe to really have a take there. I just know that like the reporting that's been like the mainstream reporting, like NFL Network style, I'm not talking about like Twitter rumors, has been that Jackson Dart is likely to be a late first round or go somewhere in the 20s, right around where the Vikings could pick. So that's the guy like in my mind. But if you want to replace that name with Jalen Milroe and say that's the guy that teams are going to do that for because I like him better, feel free. The same logic applies.
I think it could be both, which is why I bring the name up. Like there are two guys, and then there's Tyler Shuck who keeps getting mentioned. To me, that makes no sense.
I think that's fake. I don't think that's real. With like you can speak more about Tyler Shuck than I can because you've spent more time on him for sure. But it sounds, I don't know. It does the reporting doesn't pass the smell test. I think he's going to go higher than you think, and that means he's going third round or something like that. But I don't think he's part of this conversation.
I don't either. But the reporting does feel really fake. But you have to at least put it in the back of your mind.
I'm going on like pure intuition. Okay, the same intuition that kept guys like you and I from falling for the Justin Jefferson trade rumors last year. Okay, so trust us. But okay, so the logic is, and I'll throw another spicy thing in here. A Shedeur Sanders fall is in the cards as well, because the reporting around Cleveland and New York is that neither of those guys are going to take him. They're going to go Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter, or maybe the other way around. But that it's going to be that way. And then it's New England doesn't need a quarterback. Jacksonville doesn't need a quarterback. Vegas just got Geno. Jets just got Justin Fields. Maybe they do it. Maybe New Orleans does it or something like that. But there's a little bit of that kind of idea of, well, okay, if those guys just want to take like some kind of blue chip defender or some guy that they want, right? The Jets take Tyler Warren. The Saints go take, Will Johnson, the corner, like all super easy to imagine ideas. And if those things happen, suddenly you find the free fall. And where, Aaron Rodgers style, it's pick 25 and he's still on the board. And every other minute they're cutting to him on the green room kind of thing. Then suddenly you can call Cleveland and New York and say, hey, you want to have your cake and eat it too. You went and got your blue chip guy, but you could also get Shedeur Sanders. Do you want to do this? Or if it does turn out that Shedeur Sanders goes to the Jets or whatever, you call them up and say, what do you think about Jackson Dart? For me, I see at least enough of the kind of thing that Sunday quarterbacking requires from Jackson Dart to understand it. I think he's way too delicate to actually be a successful idea. I think if you're the Giants and you're going to draft Travis Hunter and then you're going to trade up to get Shedeur Sanders or to get Jackson Dart, it's to me, you're just like starting a great rookie window on an awesome player just to immediately figure out a way to waste it. But that doesn't mean I'm ruling out that they would. I just don't think they should.
Yeah. I think we're going to disagree on Dart because I think, and it's lazy to just say the Lane Kiffin tax, but it's the Lane Kiffin tax. This is just
for sure.
It's another version of Matt Corral. We can go into that at another point, if we end up having time, but we have a lot to talk about today. But
we do, yeah.
Like Jalen Milroe has just got the elite athletic profile. And if those two and or Sanders are available in the 20s, then you could start to really see some action because it's those two teams, the Jets, the Saints, because Derek Carr might not play at all this year. And because it's a shoulder, his career might just be kaplunk. So what happens there? And that's where if one of those guys or multiples available, the Vikings could really start to get interesting with those trade down possibilities.
Yeah, it's like the first kind of crossroads is New York. And what do they do? Do they actually do a quarterback or not? Because it sounds like Cleveland is already pretty much set on not doing it. And then the next crossroads is the Jets and the Saints. What happens there? And if we're past that, what quarterbacks are still left, then we can kind of make those decisions. With the Lane Kiffin thing, just for context for people who might not be familiar, it's a lot of RPOs. It's a lot of kind of Mickey Mouse stuff. For me, I approach it the same way I approached like Bo Nix, who is in a similar offense, where it's okay, then I'll just not watch those plays. And we'll just look at one where he actually did have to do some quarterbacking and judge him accordingly. So that's what like a lot of my take comes from plays that just aren't very Lane Kiffin-y. What does he do on those ones? And I see enough just only in perfect situations. It feels a little bit to me, maybe I'll get in trouble for this one, but it feels like this quarterback class is just a whole bunch of Kirk Cousinses where there's, random moments of chaos. There's, this sort of, hey, when everything's perfect and you're in shorts, you're going to look great. Or when the pocket is perfect and the route is open, you're going to be able to put that thing on time and everything. And then when things start to go wrong, the bozo comes out. So I don't know, pick your Kirk Cousins, I guess, but we don't need the Giants to be right. We don't need it to work out for them. We just need there to be enough for them to want to try it.
Yeah.
And I think that's both the reporting and my watch of Jackson Dart tell me it's a real possibility. I want to get your thoughts on I want to keep going on this like scheme thing, but we also have the All-Forno team to talk about. So let's see if we can cram it all in. Okay. That'll be next on Locked On Vikings. Today's episode is brought to you by Amazon Fire TV. Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Why not? Everything is all a package now, and the Amazon Fire is no exception. The Fire TV Stick 4K devices can turn into a whole gaming and entertainment hub. No exterior console required. Just grab a paired controller, subscribe for Xbox Game Pass Ultimate, or sign into the account you already have, and you can play EA Sports College Football or Call of Duty or whatever you're into. With 4K streaming, you can also watch more than 1.5 million movies and TV episodes from your favorite subscription services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Max, and more. Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On and you can get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including the Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, and the Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen. Moving right along here on the Locked On Vikings podcast. So, parting thoughts on the Jackson Dart thing. The For those who are not familiar with the Lane Kiffin tax, what is it about that makes you totally out on Jackson Dart? And as with all things in the draft, you're out on him to a point. At what point do you think it would be appropriate for a team to draft Jackson Dart? Like, what are we talking about here?
Round 4, round 5.
Round 4, round 5. Okay. And so, yeah, explain the Lane Kiffin tax part of it.
So Lane Kiffin is arguably the best schemer in all of college football. He's incredible. He makes things so easy. He gets guys wide open vertically, and just it makes a quarterback's job really easy. Don't have to go through a lot of progressions. It's, hey, read the safety. Oh, the safety's doing this. Put the ball here. And it's very simple stuff, but it creates a lot of explosive plays. It's a better version of the Tennessee offense you and I hate so much, where it just makes things so easy for the quarterback, but it's because of the spacing of college football. And it's something that cannot translate to the National Football League. So he's doing all this college level stuff and he's being very productive, but also his worst games are against the best competition. If you take out the non-conference schedule, which was a bad Wake Forest team and 3 complete jabronis, he had one game with good production. And
what are the jabroni teams? Apologize to Akron State or whatever.
Georgia Southern, Furman, and I can't remember the other one, but we're not talking like even a
The
mid-level,
Furman Jabronis.
not even a mid-level like FBS,
Yeah.
not even like a Minnesota or Iowa.
Warm-up teams, yeah.
Yeah, complete warm-ups. But he had 6 touchdowns against Arkansas, who has had a terrible defense. He tried 4 times on the final drive to throw the game-ending interception against Florida, and then he did. It wasn't very good
Yeah,
against
the
Georgia.
Florida meltdown is big for me because it's the going got tough and you fell apart. And he stopped reading. He stopped making decisions and he started just sort of pressing buttons.
Mhm. He wasn't
yeah,
that good
that-
against Georgia either, and they won pretty handily, but it wasn't because of him. One of the touchdowns came when he was out for a series because he got dinged up.
Oh man.
Like he was just against the best competition, he wasn't very good. You can quote me on production profiles and how that translates. I don't care. I watched the tape and the tape tells me that's not a starter in the NFL. And if I'm wrong, I'll eat it, but I'm pretty convinced of it based on, doing the work.
Yeah. So from a Vikings fan perspective, the hope is that the Giants or Browns staunchly disagree with you and want to come up to 24, and then we can like make them pay the QB tax, and like that's the dream, right? But safe to say, Jackson Dart not on the All-Forno team. The All-Forno team is how long have you been doing that?
This is the 4th rendition of the All-Forno team.
4th rendition of it. It's not a full roster, right? But it's just a list of like hashtag your guys. So give me the rundown of the All-Forno team.
I have three things that give you the criteria. One, there's only 2 guys who I project to be first round picks at max, a max of 2 players per position. And I just love watching your film. It's pretty simple. The previous 3 years, the captain, my number 1 guy, has been a wide receiver. This year, no wide receivers made the team. But that cornerback is Quincy Riley. People on Forno Fridays have heard me rave about him. I'm just obsessed. Kobe Bryant also plays like Quincy Riley. I think there's a
corner out of Kansas.
Got it.
Quincy Riley is Louisville, right?
Yep. Linebacker Jahad Campbell is the only guy with a first round grade. He's 7th on my big board.
I'm stupid. A&M?
No, Alabama.
Mm-hmm. My
bad. Our boy, the Oregon defensive tackle Jamari Caldwell, the Armada Player of the Week a couple weeks ago. He's on there. And then 2 running backs, DJ Giddens from Kansas State, who you and I both really like, and RJ Harvey, the Central Florida running back, who to me screams this is a clone of Maurice Jones-Drew. Size, movement ability.
That's like a Brett Coleman level comp. Brett Coleman, like it's like a 5th rounder to a Hall of Famer kind of comp.
The Maurice Jones-Drew was like a 3rd or 4th rounder, and I think that RJ Harvey goes in around that same spot. Very similar size. He's like 5'8", 207 pounds, built like a brick house. Ran a 4.43 40. Great in the open field. Great contact balance. Runs through tackles. He's just a little short. This dude can absolutely play great football.
So wait, I'm completely unfamiliar with RJ Harvey. I stopped watching the running backs after I got through like the top 6.
Yeah.
I stopped watching running backs when they re-signed Aaron Jones and traded for Jordan Mason, which I was only through the top 6 by then. Is that the whole problem? Is people say he's short? Because as a running back, short is good.
Well, I mean, he's shorter than pretty much everybody else. I'll pull up. I can't remember where I have him. I think he's like, he's running back 8 for me with a high 3rd round grade. I don't think he's the second coming, but man, he's a guy you want to have in your running back room based on how he plays. Like Darren Sproles was like the short king running back, but he plays like a workhorse, and he's handled a workhorse load in college and done very, very well with it. So I think you could have him as a 1A or a 1B and feel pretty good about it. But the Maurice Jones-Drew comp, like I don't do comps unless I really believe it. The size, the play style,
I know you're like usually super reticent to do it, but I need to label that is, you might be right, but a Brett move.
It is 100% a Brett move, but I don't give comps to a lot of players. This one fit 100%. That's the All-Forno team. Just my guys. Quincy Riley, the captain, like he's 28th on my big board. I'm going to be like probably like 60 spots higher than everybody else in the industry, and I just don't care. I think that guy's going to be
I'm there
really
with,
good pro.
CJ West for sure.
I love CJ West.
Yeah, I was like flirting with calling him a 1st rounder, which I think puts me pretty, because he's like day 3 to some people.
He's probably going to go in late round 2, early round 3 is my guess at this point.
Yeah, which is a take I defended for the entire show on yesterday's episode. So if you disagree with me, go listen to that, see if you still feel that way. But I feel an obligation to go through a couple of my guys. I don't have as big of an all Luke team. I don't do this exercise like you do, but the few guys as the wrap out to Forno Fridays, let's just kind of, here's our list of like our hashtag guys. CJ West is one for me. Kenneth Grant is one for me. I think he's the best D tackle in the class. Mason Graham is probably going to go over him, and I think that will be the incorrect. I don't think that will hold up.
I agree completely.
And then the only other guy that I have on this, because this draft has been ridiculously uninspiring to me, is if Benjamin Morrison is healthy. He's my guy. That guy is CB1 to me with a bullet if he's healthy. But he might fall all the way out of the first round and maybe even deep into day 2 because of the medicals going on with him. So, but man, that dude can play Flores style, beat you up kind of cornerback. Absolutely awesome. Fluid hips, sticky man coverage, like everything you could ever want, except he might not be there. He might not be available. And that's a real problem. And it's so frustrating to me. I really wish I could just like pencil him in as like the guy, but he might not have an NFL career at all if the health doesn't work out. That's like torn hip labrum, and the recovery is going with that. A lot of complications, really, really scary stuff. Hey, this is the last time that Locked On Vikings listeners are going to hear from you until the draft. We'll be sure to chit chat live a little bit, especially as I'm doing the day 3 thing. For those who don't know, who don't listen to the football party, I lost the betting contest. I have to be live for all of day 3. That will be simulcast on the Locked On Vikings and Locked On Minnesota Sports YouTube channels. So you can come hang out with me day 3, come chat, come help me pass the 7 hours of time, and Tyler will be on for that as well. But for everybody else, any parting words for Locked On Vikings listeners? Any the last thing you want them to hear about the draft from you?
Enjoy it. And I'll say this. I'm convinced of certain things because I believe it. And when I say it, like I'm still not convinced Bo Nix is going to be a good NFL quarterback. You have to barely be better than Russell Wilson. That's all he was last year. Like, prove yourself.
Yeah.
But don't be
That's
afraid.
the standard for McCarthy too. Beat Nick Mullins and like be better than Nick Mullins, and we're winning 9 games.
Yeah. If you end up wanting to do this, which I high recommend, if you love football, this is great. Don't be afraid to have conviction, and don't be afraid to be different. Don't just stray with consensus. If you believe that Quincy Riley is the 28th best player in this class, which I do, say it, and don't be afraid about it. Because if you aren't confident in yourself, why should I be confident in you? And that's how I approach it. Everything you hear from me is because I believe it. And if I say I don't know, I'm okay with that. But it's been a joy, Luke. This is the highlight of my week. I'm sad it's over.
I know. I had that makes me think of a couple of my biggest regrets from the last couple draft cycles. And they're all that I thought something and I didn't go hard enough on it. I had watched Jahmyr Gibbs and Bijan Robinson, and I, for a long time, had Jahmyr Gibbs above Bijan Robinson. But at the last minute before releasing all the content, I went, everybody's so into Bijan. I got to be just overreacting to one or two little things. And I decided to move it. And that ended up, and I I could have had that one. And I just didn't trust myself enough. And I think it was the same thing with quarterbacks this year. I ended up placing Caleb Williams as the easy, I had him QB3, which was still a pretty hot take. I had him below Drake May and Jaden Daniels. And I kind of was always like caveating it with like, yeah, but I could see a world and blah, blah, blah. And everybody's, and I really, really wish that I had stuck to that and said, no, he's worse than Jaden Daniels. Like, he just is. And the way that things started, I would have been really vindicated on that. But again, I just didn't trust myself. I think that's great advice. Trust yourself, and don't be afraid to just take an L.
Yeah. The one thing is, everybody's so wrong in this industry all the time.
Everybody takes L's. If you aren't taking L's, you're just not covering the draft, which is fine. You don't have to by law yet. But who knows what the government will do. But I'm thinking like, okay, I was dead wrong on Cam Smith. couple years ago. I was a big fan of him. He's totally flaming out. And you just eat that on the chin. And it's fine because guess what? Between then and now, in the 2 years since I had that take, I've learned so much more about cornerback. And I feel confident that if I watched a similar kind of player, that I wouldn't make the same mistakes. And as long as you're there, you're doing all right.
Yeah,
we'll definitely talk next weekend, Tyler. We'll definitely talk over the course of the draft. Come hang out with me on day 3, help restore my sanity a little bit. And hopefully you can be on stream when Quincy Riley gets drafted. If he's still around, if he does indeed go day 3 like he's projected to, we'll let's try to aim for that, or aim for just a moment where the Vikings don't have a lot of picks. Come on the 4th round or something, so that you're not missing a pick over on the show you're going to be on. But for everybody else, I will see you all on Monday, and as always, Skull.